The Buckeyes have an unusual amount of pressure on their shoulders this year. How does the team feel about it? I'll tell you. Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We always appreciate it very much. And of course, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're brought to you by FanDuel, FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, on today's show, we are going to talk about this amazing pressure on Ohio State. It's always there, but it seems like it is up a notch this year, maybe more so than anywhere else. We'll check in on a few places in the final week of camp and our Tuesday tweets. We'll see if your tweet made it on to the podcast today. Be sure to subscribe and follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way, you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Okay, let's talk about this pressure on Ohio State and what the Buckeyes face and how the team is dealing with it. And look, there's a handful of colleges that have this kind of pressure every year. What kind of pressure is that? It's the kind of pressure where you can't lose a single game all year. I mean, 98% of all colleges, teams would be thrilled with 11-2 records every year and a chance to go to the playoffs. But some schools, even that's not good enough. It's a short list, like maybe Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. And I'm going to get in trouble for this. I would not put Michigan in that same category just because of look at all the patience they had at the beginning with Jim Harbaugh when he couldn't beat Ohio State. Look, if Ryan Day goes 4 or 5 years in a row without beating Michigan, you think he's going to be allowed to stay? Even if he wins like 80, 90% of his games? I don't think so. At Michigan, that didn't happen. So that doesn't mean Michigan doesn't want to win as badly. That doesn't mean Michigan doesn't want to beat Ohio State, but I just think there's just a different level. And plus, Michigan's got other rivalries like Michigan State around the corner, even though Ohio State is the rival. It's best one in college sports, best one in sports, period. I don't want to belittle that. They also have rivalries in state with Michigan State, occasionally throwing a Notre Dame, that kind of thing. Look, Ohio State has the one rival. It is Michigan. They have to beat them. That makes the pressure even tighter and more focused. So I don't want to take away from any of that. They were 11-2 last year and one kick away at the end of a game from making it to a national championship. Yet this year's camp, from what I've seen, seems very businesslike, almost stoic. And it almost feels like, hey, last year was a failure and we've got to take that next step to get back to where we were and beating Michigan and winning college football playoff games and winning national championships. That's what it feels like. And that's the pressure that Ryan Day, head coach of the Buckeyes, has to face each and every day while he's there. It's been 5 years now. And in those 5 years, Ryan Day has lost a total of 6 games. And all everybody really wants to talk about are the last 2 losses to Michigan or the last 2 losses last year, which did include Michigan, and then the last second playoff loss to Georgia. That's all everybody's talking about. Yet over the past 5 years, Ryan Day is has the second highest FBS winning percentage among all coaches in college football, except for a guy by the name of Nick Saban at Alabama. Ryan Day has won 88% of his games. I have told you on this podcast before, he could run the table this season and get to the Michigan game in November and be undefeated. That will raise his winning percentage to 90%. That'll be tops anywhere. And yet, if he loses that Michigan game, people are going to lose their minds. That's what I'm talking about that extra layer of pressure now that they've lost to Michigan 2 years in a row. It is there, and it is palpable. I think they're up for the challenge. I think they're ready for it. I think they acknowledge it. But that's what they have to deal with, and you don't have to deal with that at every campus in America. It's only a select few that have to deal with that kind of pressure day in and day out. So that's the backdrop to the storyline for the Buckeyes this season. And then, oh, by the way, on top of that, it's the quarterback situation. Kyle McCord and Devin Brown going to the wire trying to figure out who the starting quarterback is going to be here. And my question is, do they have no quarterbacks or do they have two starters? The reason I only bring that up is because there used to be a saying, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none, right? Because one's not good enough to assert himself. You really don't have a starter. Ohio State seems to feel like, no, they not only have one good start, they've got two guys that would start anywhere else in the country. And they're taking their time trying to figure out who that guy is going to be. And, you got to give Ryan Day the benefit of the doubt here. He has a wonderful track record with quarterbacks while he's been at Ohio State. J.T. Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, C.J. Stroud. Those four guys, when they were at Ohio State, averaged 4,000 yards passing a year and 40 touchdowns a year. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty amazing. In fact, and on top of that, not only do they produce, they also take care of the football. J.T. Barrett threw 104 touchdowns, had 30 interceptions. That's a pretty good ratio. Dwayne Haskins, 54 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. That's it. Justin Fields, 63 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. And C.J. Stroud, 85 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. That's pretty good. That's phenomenal. You're not going to beat that anywhere. So I like his track record. And remember, those quarterbacks I mentioned, a guy by the name of Joe Burrow wasn't good enough to crack that lineup. He had to leave. Couldn't get on the field. Transferred to LSU, went undefeated with Ed Orgeron and won a national championship. Now he's one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League, right? Now, Day would have liked to have named a starter at Ohio State last week at the latest, but he hasn't. And unless he makes an announcement before Thursday, it kind of feels like this competition is headed right into the game in Bloomington on Saturday against the Indiana Hoosiers. Now, McCord has a little bit more experience, not much, but he's completed 16 passes and he's thrown a touchdown while backing up C.J. Stroud. Brown, on the other hand, was the 5th-rated quarterback of the 2022 high school class, and he hasn't played. He has no experience. By the way, he's going to wear number 33, and that's old slinging Sammy Baugh's number. Now, you youngsters out there, I'll have to include myself among you because this is way before my time. Sammy Baugh was a 2-time NFL champion back in the late 1930s and early 1940s. That was a while ago. Wore number 33. So that's why Brown wants to in honor of that. It says he's worn that number since he was a 7-year-old kid because of Sammy Baugh. Just throw that little fun fact out at you. But, many, myself included, thought that this would be McCord's job because he did have some experience. He was kind of waiting in the wings. But the fact that he's not the clear-cut winner at this point seems to favor Brown. He's been hanging in there, right? Or maybe this is a 2-quarterback system for the first few games of the system. Not what I would prefer. I'm sure it's not what Ryan Day prefers, but maybe that's the direction they are headed here. So I'm not sure how all this is going to play out. It's going to be fun to watch, that's for sure. And then, by the way, whoever gets the job, you get to throw the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, 2 of the best receivers in all college football. It's going to be a field day out there. And they're going to do it with Brian Hartline going to be calling the plays as offensive coordinator. He's going to be calling the plays, though, for the first time. Ryan Day is giving that up this year. Hartline taking over from Kevin Wilson, who left for the Tulsa job. Take care of the play calling and everything. Ryan Day is going to try and be in touch with more departments and delegate a little bit, but he'll still have input, certainly, on this offense. And this is an offense that's going to have a lot of new faces on the offensive line, including center and tackle. And that would be the one thing. If you had to look at this team that is, I don't want to say a perfect roster because it's not, but it's pretty good. Question mark is how there's going to be a lot of new faces on the offensive line. How quickly do they gel? That's a very important position that just doesn't happen overnight. The whole line as a whole, all 5 guys. By the way, the Buckeyes have added 8 guys to the roster from the transfer portal that were either 4 or 5 stars as high school players. Just throw that in. So I don't think any of them are going to crack the starting lineup, but they're going to be as deep as any other team, like Penn State and Michigan, that deep. So the roster is loaded. This is so good you can't crack the starting lineup, even if you're a 4 or 5 star out of high school or a transfer. This is a team that led FBS football in scoring the last 4 years at 44.9 points a game, so almost 45 points a game, and number 1 in FBS at more than 7 yards of play. Yeah, every play you're just cranking out 7 yards. Just every 2 plays we're moving the chains. It's phenomenal. The question mark sort of was defense. Now, last year, the defense looked pretty good for the most part. They gave up 17 points per game in the first 11 games. That's as good as anybody. Maybe Iowa was a little better, but that's about it. That's pretty good. But the last 2 games against Michigan and against Georgia gave up almost 44 points on average. And as Ryan Day says, that left us with a little bit of scar tissue. So defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, he knows that the difference between an 11-win season, which would be great anywhere else, and winning a national championship is a few details in a few games, a few explosive plays here or there, and the whole thing's over, right? He says it boils down to the small details in practice, which translate to the small details in the games, which translate into the results. He says he's been coaching a long time. He says the job is always the same, but the expectations are just a little bit different at Ohio State. And he's right. The schedule, they start out at Indiana, as we mentioned. They got the road games at Notre Dame. That's going to be exciting at the end of September. They're at Wisconsin. They're at Michigan. Michigan game's at Ann Arbor this year. They got a home tilt against Penn State. That's a pretty tough schedule, but it's a typical schedule for the Buckeyes. And like I said, they might even be undefeated, maybe, going up to that last game at Ann Arbor, taking on the Michigan Wolverines. And that's when the real pressure starts for these guys. Take your comments on it. Hit me up on Twitter at Talk Big Ten, or comments here on YouTube. If you're watching on video, would love to hear from you. And the national pundits are checking in with their Big Ten predictions now that we're on game week here. Predictions I've been giving you all summer long, I might add, but we'll put them on the record and we'll check them all out. And later on, Tuesday tweets. It's all coming up right here on Locked On Big Ten. Locked On Big Ten is sponsored by BetterHelp. And this is for you if you're thinking about getting some therapy. This is something you want to definitely consider, whether you're dealing with decisions around your career, your relationships, or anything else. Therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life, so you can move forward with confidence and excitement and be ready to take on your life. Maybe you can learn some new coping skills, some positive coping skills, set some boundaries, just be a better version of yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to fit your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist. And by the way, if you decide you want to switch therapists, you could do that anytime, no additional charge. So let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege and today, and you'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedoncollege. All right, so I mentioned a lot of pundits are checking in with their opinions on how things are going to go, and that does include around the Big Ten, by the way. So I don't know if, a lot of people are talking about, look, it's Michigan, it's Ohio State. Some people throw in Penn State. Some people say Wisconsin coming out of the other division, Iowa. Well, after making their week 0 picks this weekend, ESPN Game Day, did you catch it over the weekend? They start making their predictions about the conferences around college football. Desmond Howard, of course, picked Michigan. Why wouldn't he? Says J.J. McCarthy's going to step up, and he's got the most loaded backfield in the country behind him. All true. Kirk Herbstreit, on the other hand, of course, picked Ohio State. He addressed the Buckeyes defense, giving up those explosive plays at the end of the year last year against Michigan and Ohio State. But he feels like Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator, has had an entire offseason to address those problems, and he expects them to be fixed and for them to move on. So it was 1-1, and then Pat McAfee on the set broke the tie, went Ohio State's way. Says after what has happened to them the last 2 years that they should have the right attitude and culture and mindset to go ahead and change the result this year and win. Also, the Big Ten Network's analyst Nicole Auerbach, she said people are underestimating Wisconsin running back Braylon Allen. Well, we just featured Braylon Allen in our conversation Friday on our podcast about Wisconsin. So other people are overlooking Braylon Allen, not us here at Locked On Big Ten. But nonetheless, I mean, he's rushed for over 2,500 yards and 23 touchdowns the last 2 years. Maybe he'll catch some touchdown passes this year as Luke Fickell and Phil Longo are installing that air raid offense we spent time talking about. And they open up the season against Buffalo on Saturday. By the way, though, I saw another article on the Badgers from The Athletic. And they had a fun fact. They made some predictions about the Badgers. First of all, they said Tanner Mordecai will break Russell Wilson's single-season passing yards record, but not his touchdown record there, which would be 3,175 yards. Also 33 touchdowns against 4 interceptions, mind you. That was pretty good. It predicted the air raid offense will be more 50-50. I found this to be fascinating. And then they said, look, Phil Longo, when he was at North Carolina from 2019 to 2022, ran the ball 45% of the time. That is close to 50-50. Is this going to be an air raid or not at Wisconsin? Stay tuned. The Athletic also went on to say that Wisconsin will beat Ohio State for the first time since 2010. Last year, let me remind you, Wisconsin did not pass the 50-yard line against Ohio State until they fell behind by 4 touchdowns in that game. So, I don't know how much has changed in a year. We'll find out. But I don't know if I would go out. Maybe. I mean, it'll be a tough game. It'll be a fun game. Here's a Penn State fun fact for you. Trace McSorley and Sean Clifford. By the way, Trace McSorley just got released by the Patriots. Trace McSorley and Sean Clifford combined for 47 career pass attempts. 47 attempts combined between the two of them before they ended up getting their first start. So not much. Drew Aller threw 60 passes last year, and he's presumed going to be the starter this year. McSorley went 11-3 his first year as a starter and won a Big Ten title. Clifford went 11-2 and won the Cotton Bowl. So maybe some good things in store for Drew Aller. And he's got a better offensive line than those guys had this year at Penn State. There's no question he does. And also, I want to let you know that Purdue has announced that former Boiler and Tampa Bay Buccaneer Mike Allstott, remember him, the big bruising fullback? He's going to be the Boilers' honorary captain for Purdue's opener against Fresno State this weekend. So that's pretty cool. I want to take a minute here to thank all of you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day. Our first Big Ten game is 2 days away, Thursday night. Are you ready? We're going to be all over it. Meanwhile, make sure to subscribe. Always looking for more subscribers. Just click it on. It's free. It's good to go. And you'll be helping us out. And if you're checking out this podcast via some other means, I invite you all to share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten. Asking you to do that. That would be very much appreciated. Coming up, our next weekly feature, it's our Tuesday tweets. We'll find out if your tweet made it. We're going to feature some of those. It's all coming up here on Locked On Big Ten. But before we do, I want to tell you about FanDuel. That's right. We are brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and they've got a great deal for you with football season here and giving you a chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. You just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. And I always like to keep you updated on this just for fun. The Super Bowl odds, according to FanDuel right now, Kansas City plus 600, $100 get you 600. The Eagles are at plus 800. I told you last week, this is the same as last week, but it was a change last week. The Bills, who were plus 1,000, are now plus 900. Cowboys plus 1,300. Bengals and 49ers at plus 1,000. So go ahead and put some action down and have some fun. By the way, I really got deep in the weeds with it. I mean, you could bet on anything. They said if Arizona beats the Browns in the Super Bowl, it's plus 400,000. You never know. You never know. Anyway, you could use your bets on anything, spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sports book. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. And have a lot of fun. That is an absolute blast. Okay, let's get into it. Tuesday tweets. These are always fun. I'm going to put them up on the screen in case you're only listening on the audio version of this podcast somewhere. I'll describe them to you in detail. And first up is from at the University of Michigan football, at UMich football. And it is a nice collage. Game 1. East Carolina versus Michigan. It is ready to go, and it says game week is finally here. I tweeted out a lot of these this week at Talk Big Ten because virtually every team put out some sort of poster or picture and said game 1 is here. Everybody is all excited about the season starting. So I just showed you this one as an example from Michigan. Let's go to this here. This next one is one of the coolest photos I've ever seen. It is from at CF Report. That's College Football Report. It is an overhead shot back in the day of the Rose Bowl, Stanford and Iowa. It says real ones remember when Iowa made the Rose Bowl. That's cool. But the picture itself is an overhead of an overhead. There is a shot of the B-1 stealth bomber flying over the field during the national anthem. And it is a great shot on top of the stealth bomber on top of the stadium. It is great. So, by the way, I used to live out there, not too far from the Rose Bowl. And one year on December 31st, I heard this huge rumble over my house. It sounded like something was flying into my... I looked outside. It was the stealth bomber. It was doing a dress rehearsal, timing out the approach to, hit the last note of the national anthem. I always thought stealth bombers were quiet. They're not. You just can't see them on radar, but they're noisy. Large, long rumble. Very cool picture, though. I wanted to share that. Also, this is from at Zach Blackerby. By the way, he's the host of Locked On Auburn. I saw one of his tweets and I decided to resend it out. It is a picture of his TV right before we kicked off the college football season, week 0 this past weekend when Notre Dame took on Navy in Ireland. It's a nice shot. Thought I'd give him some run on that. And then here is from at the Mop Lady. I use a lot of hers. She always has some great pictures. This is sunrise over the horizon. There's Assembly Hall in the background, and there's Memorial Stadium, the football stadium in Bloomington, all painted and ready to go and host the Ohio State Buckeyes on Saturday. But a beautiful shot of the sunrise over the football stadium in Bloomington. Got a couple more for you here. This is from at Barstool MSU, Michigan State, Barstool Spartans. This is actually a video, a couple seconds long. It's a still shot here. And it's a couple of kids, shirtless kids out in the front yard of the frat playing ping pong ball in an absolute deluge at nighttime of rain. Says it looks like it's clearing up a bit. Might as well keep the game going. Yeah, it wasn't clearing up. It was an absolute, just a downpour. And finally, here's one from at Maryland football, at Terps football. Script Terps is the best uniform in the country. Facts only. It is a picture of the Maryland Terps uniform with the helmet, the black helmet with the cursive Terps on it. Look, everybody loves their own helmets, their own uniforms, and wanted to share that. So that's it for our Tuesday tweets. I always love that features one of my favorites that we do each and every week. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day. You every day is our next show. We'll have the latest from all the Big Ten camps. We're counting it down, a couple days away from the games. You can still look out for our Locked On Big Ten Roundtable podcast with other Locked On podcasters. It's still evergreen. It's still good. It's still preseason, so you can check it out. It's called the Ultimate College Football Podcast, and it is out now. Many ways for you to interact with me, of course, at Twitter, at Talk Big Ten, and be sure to subscribe, please. Thank you. I would really appreciate it if you get our numbers. We're already over 3,000, thanks to you guys. Let's keep them going. Follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. So that will do it. Again, check out the Ultimate College Football Podcast. In the meantime, can't wait to talk to you again tomorrow. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten.